Today I would like to emphasize the unfair, racist, and cruel intentions of Executive Order 9066. Executive Order 9066 is the order put in place during the February of 1942. It pretty much is just a huge propaganda. In summary, the order says, if you are what we deem Japanese, you're going to take you and put you in a sort of prison to make sure the rest of America feels safe. To understand why they chose this route, we have to look back a year before the order was placed. Okay, let me paint a picture. It's World War II, and the US and Japan have a lot of tension. The United States didn't agree with Japan supporting China, and Japan was annoyed that we cut off their oil supply. Japan kept saying they'd play nicer if we started trading with them again, which was all good except they didn't mention taking their troops out of China, which is what we wanted. The tension grew, and Roosevelt realized that this was not going to end peacefully. Fearing that they'd attack our oil, we played defense in all the places that would make sense. Japan went to a place that didn't make sense, a base in the middle of nowhere. Pearl Harbor was all the way in Hawaii, and by the time they figured out what would happen, it was too late. On December 7th, 1941, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. On December 7th, 1941, Americans hated the Japanese. What makes someone Japanese? What defines race? That depends where you are, because in Brazil, being black means you're fully African. Not a drop of any other race can be in you to be black. To them, being white means you have any form of European in you. In the US, we use the one-drop rule. One drop of African makes you black. This seems to have come from our history of slavery, where being black meant you were below them. It meant you were born from slaves, and therefore a slave. One drop of Japanese meant you were born from the enemy, and therefore you are the enemy. Japanese Americans were not the enemy. Japanese Americans are not the enemy. But we put resources together to take them from their homes, stole them from their families, and shoved them into camps. If I just said that sentence without any context, you'd think we were talking about Nazi Germany. Were we becoming Nazi Germany? I mean, we weren't actively killing Japanese Americans, but we were wrongfully accusing them. Roosevelt was taking these innocent families with women and children away from their homes in the middle of nowhere. While fighting the Germans, we were becoming them. Sometimes I wish the world leaders would just figure this out amongst themselves instead of bringing everyone else into it. Like, why can't we just throw them in a boxing ring till we knock some sense into them? When you take the Japanese Americans out of our communities lose so much charm, so much diversity. God, we're America. We're the land of immigrants, not the land of barren camps. That's what they looked like, by the way, completely barren. The archives at FDR had a good amount of pictures of them, and they are depressing to say the least. I think it's a good thing these pictures are in black and white, because it just adds to how dull and sad this all is. Before looking into this subject, I never really thought about how messed up it was. We glaze over these things too much in history class. We look at all the wins and paint a picture of how great our country is. We celebrate the independence of our nation. We mourn 9/11, we mourn Pearl Harbor, we mourn attacks against our people from other countries, but not attacks of our country on our own people. After realizing that we were in the wrong, the FDR website states that FDR made little effort to defend the internees from the stigma of disloyalty in the months after Executive Order 9066 was signed, and he took no recorded steps to improve conditions in the camps. These were not camps. These were not joy. Internment camps were prisons. If I showed you a picture of these so-called camps and just told you they were the new prisons we built with no prior knowledge about these camps, you'd believe me. Why would you believe me? You'd believe me because these are not camps. These are prisons. You can leave camp whenever you want. They couldn't leave because these weren't camps. If these are so obviously not happy little summer camps, why did the public fall for it? Well, it was a time of war. People were busy and they trusted our president. They have the fireside chat in the FDR archives, and when you read it, he's very personable. He ends it with, "Together, we will not fail." It's not like they had social media back then either. The general public would not know much about these camps unless they went to visit them. No one had time, money, or reason to go to these camps. On my trip to FDR, Jeff Urban mentioned how the president was ill and couldn't even walk. So even he wasn't taking a trip to the grounds. His wife was, though. Eleanor Roosevelt can be seen in a picture on the website, smiling alongside the Japanese. While FDR was claiming to be for the people, Eleanor Roosevelt can be seen actually being for them. Eleanor knew that these people were not the enemy. She knew these were Americans. All the public announcements and propaganda against the Japanese, and he couldn't even convince his own wife to stay on his side. I could go on about this for hours. It really is an interesting and sad event. The Japanese internment camps truly show how the social construct of race has impacted so many Americans in the past, present, and if we don't learn, the future.